that they are not wishing to have this component part of that bylaw, then we haven't given the bylaw any reading, but we would be bringing forward the bylaw complete, which would include all of 2B.
Okay. So I am taking it that it could be removed and still sent forward. Thank you. So I will motivate this, Chair, if I may. I'm not anti-heritage at all. I respect heritage. I think the rest of the bylaw as recommended is fantastic. I think we should keep it, but I think a couple of things come into play. Councillor Sanders spoke earlier about how the bylaw that Mr. Mayor Cole passed in 1992, I think it was referenced in 94, already provided a lens for this chamber. That's inaccurate. I'll quote, "The provisions of this bylaw do not apply to the interior of any building." So to me, while that lens will come into play with this new bylaw, what we are repealing does not currently speak to this chamber. That's my reading of the bylaw as understood. I appreciate that there has been a sentiment expressed that the renovations that can occur in this chamber to modernize it for webcasting, for whatever, light would be one other component, can be done sensitively within that. Well, I don't think you should go that way. I think you do the renovations and then you put in that designation. Now, I respect that others may feel differently, but you also have to acknowledge that it's fine for another councillor to suggest the opposite. The chamber is a working space. That's its number one purpose. I think that the chamber needs to be modernized as necessary and should not be encumbered potentially by a heritage designation that prevents updates without going through renovation, through the future alterations. I'm saying let's do those renovations and then apply the heritage designation. I think that the council chambers are not a part of the building that are going to be held to the same standards. It must be done as a working space first, and whatever that requires must come ahead of a heritage designation. So I would say at this point, not sending it until the renovations are done. Thank you.
I recognize Vicky Saunders, and then Mr. Mayor, Dean, and then Councillor Waldron.
Thank you, because I won't be supporting that. The point of this whole report was that the original bylaw could only designate the building. We didn't have the ability with the Heritage Conservation Act, or whatever it is, to be able to designate specific elements of an interior of the building at that time, and which we are now able to do, and that's the point of this. So, of course, that original, in 1992, there's a policy. There's an actual policy that says that it's not part of this package, I don't have it here, it's 1992, and the policy is that any amendments to be done to the building, the interior of the building, it has to go through and it's the facilities department through engineering, look at it. It has to go through the lens of the Heritage Foundation, the advisory design panel, and at that time an archival committee. So that lens is already in place. It's not part of the designation, it's part of facilities. I guess it's an administrative policy, but we have that in place. So I'm saying that lens is already in place. So before this would have to be done, that still would be looked at. But this now puts the elements in place. And if you look what the elements are we going to rip the panel off the back, or don't take the ceilings down? I mean, yes, this is a workspace, of course it is, but so is the second floor where people, they work in that space. But these are all parts of the elements. And as we've already heard from Brad Shuya, that you sort of can't recreate heritage into something else. Heritage is the spirit and the essence that was there. You're sensitive to do that. This baffling at the top, it's not just architecturally to look that way. There is also sound components and acoustics. There's many things that are worked into this. So those are my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you, Chair. I'm going to support this amendment because I think there's a basic architectural tenet here at work that we heard from Mr. Shuya, and what he said was that form follows function. And we've had a chamber that's functioned for a long time, and a form was built around that, and now we're thinking about modifying the chamber substantially to modernize it. And I don't think we should be encumbering the function by setting the form in stone, in a
No
sense.
pun intended.
Yes, in a sense, before we do that. While we can come through this process through an amendment that was shared with us with our planner, I believe if we are to follow this basic way of building and planning and so forth, that we maybe should put this just small section aside until we have a better idea of what we are going to actually select in terms of modifying the chamber and then incorporate it. That's my reasoning for supporting this amendment. Thank you.
Councillor Mellon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's funny that two people can hear the same person speak and hear it two different ways, because what I thought I heard Mr. Shuya say was that, yes, form follows function, but that he didn't view including the chamber in this bylaw as being particularly onerous if council were to make changes, or, well, if council were to provide direction to make changes, unless we're all going to show up with some hammers and a saw. For me, I won't be supporting the amendment because I don't view it as consistent with the spirit of the bylaw. If we are going to sort of cherry pick the elements that we want to preserve but leave other parts out so we can change things as we see fit and then try to tuck them into the bylaw, what's the point of having it in the first place? I view this as being respectful of the heritage nature of the building, and that includes this chamber, which you can no doubt tell by looking at it is consistent mostly with what it would have had when it was built. I don't see it as necessary to exempt this room so that we can make changes without consideration of the heritage importance, only to then try and add it in later. I think that whatever we do here needs to be consistent with the changes, or sorry, needs to be consistent with the heritage of the rest of the building. And I see Mr. Shuya nodding his head in approval, so I'm pleased to have that acknowledged, and so therefore I won't be supporting the amendment.
At that point, I just interrupt if I may. Can I get staff to just clarify the two statements that seem to be concerning some members of council? The one, to move forward with the heritage work in this room through the lens of the original interpretation, or secondly, to see it through the designation of this space as a heritage registered space. The tools that are available to do the changes once the designation has been put in place, Councillor Sanders mentioned going through the advisory panel, etc. How onerous are they? Can you give some sense of what that process would look like? Maybe that would help some councillors, including this one, more fully understand.
Just trying to extract process versus legality versus practice. The interior of the building today is not designated. If council wanted to make these changes, I would hypothesize that council would want the input of the Saanich Heritage Foundation and the Arts and Culture Committee anyway, as members of the community and looking for feedback. If you designate, that becomes a requirement that you must go through that process, get feedback, a report is provided to you, and then ultimately you are the decision-making authority of whether or not that permit is issued or not. So, very similar. One is an ask, one is a requirement.
Okay. Thank you very much. Having heard that, I believe we have Councillor Wortland.
Thanks very much, Chair. If you asked my wife, she'd say I'd be a difficult one when it came to making change. I like things just the way they are. And I could probably, over the last 20 years, I've got used to this dark wood. I've got used to when the lights aren't on, it's one dark cavity in here. The only light we have to the outside is what comes through that little slot over there. But we were showing some drawings recently, in the last couple of months, of what this might look like. And if we all thought, that looks okay. It gives a whole different appearance. It's bright, it's cheery, it's welcoming. The problem is, if we follow those drawings, it is not going to look like what we have here tonight. And that's where I get concerned. I know we've been told that, so long as we're sympathetic to what was here, it's okay. I'm not sympathetic to what we have here. You know, myself, I think the public, I think we'd all be well served by having something different design, coming back to the wood, brighten it up, coming back to the brick. Yeah, it is block. There's no way of looking at it. It's just a stacked block. And if it's heritage, that's the way it stays. And I do have a concern. And that's where I'm getting off or getting on, whatever. And I'm not sure it'll be that easy after to just make those changes and still have it look like it is here. Thank you.
Thank you. And then next, Councillor O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not going to support this motion. The principle that we are looking at is the principle of protection of heritage, as we do throughout the municipality. And we don't tend to cherry pick parts of a building. We decide whether or not a building and how it was designed originally and built is respective then of heritage designation. To take the approach that you will make whatever changes in here you want without particular consideration, I guess, of the heritage, and then fit it in after is completely and utterly against the spirit and intent of the bylaw, and indeed of council's policy, not only here, but throughout the municipality. That's unsupportable as far as I'm concerned. I would agree with the planner that if we were going to act in a reasonable manner and we decided we were going to put changes in here and we hadn't included this in the bylaw, we would probably expect ourselves to go to the Heritage Committee, go to the Heritage Foundation for advice, and then decide upon that advice. The only difference that happens is that we will now formalize that process, which we would be kind of morally obligated to do anyhow, into a requirement. We are still the decision makers. If we don't like the advice that comes back, we can make whatever changes we want. But we are mandated to properly seek that advice, and we are mandated to follow the kind of policies we would expect in the community at large. And that only makes sense to, you know, exempt something because we think, well, maybe we might want to fiddle with it a little bit and make it, think that we're going to make it not subject to the same rules and policies that we expect in the community at large. I think it's just unacceptable. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Bryce?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not going to support the amendment because it's moot. The 9 people around this table will ultimately decide what goes on in this room. It's to support the amendment now, I think sort of flies in the face of this whole bylaw. I am not a lover of this particular type of architecture, I'll tell you right off, but I respect the fact that it is heritage. Would I have ever designed a building that did not take advantage of a vista over Swan Lake? No, absolutely not. I would have had a different memo to my architect of the day. However, that wasn't the case. This was the building. It is a heritage building. Listening to Mr. Shoya and to our planner, both of them indicating that the function that can go on within this area doesn't need to be compromised, that we can proceed and then still make necessary changes. So I don't see this as a value added, quite frankly. I see this as a sort of diminution of the effort.
Council, do you want a second round? Oh, I apologise, Councillor Brown. For the first time.
You have my name down there.
I do.
I sit right beside you. Okay, JB, okay, good. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not going to support this amendment either because a lot of my colleagues have made similar comments. I mean, it's like going against things we value. If you look at what's under the council chamber, would I ever think that we would remove this wood? I mean, it brings a kind of substance to this place where we make really good, valuable decisions for our community. I think I listen to architects who are in the business of heritage buildings, and Mr. Shuya is our Heritage Foundation. So when he says those things about we can do some changes to the chamber, it won't compromise the integrity of the heritage element, and then when our staff say the same thing, I think that it really makes us look foolish that we're taking one piece out. Well, what if we get back up and we want to take out some other pieces? I just want to be clear. If we're supporting heritage, and we have a lot of investment in heritage, in buildings in this city, we have to be thinking sympathetically to what we're doing as well. All these things in the council chamber under this bylaw are definitely supportive. Can there be changes? We've been told that what's being proposed with webcasting and all those things can be done in a sympathetic manner. I agree. I mean, I don't understand why there wasn't a skylight. It's so dark in here. But the day was 50 years ago, and that was the architecture. And would I build a concrete building? Absolutely not. But I can tell you, we have a concrete house that is an award winner in Saanich, and it's worth millions of dollars. And so concrete, you know, has been a choice of some. So I really think that this chamber really shows the importance of decisions being made here. The wood, the solid concrete foundation, the whole design. So taking this part out of it just weakens the whole bylaw, so I'm not supporting the motion.
Okay, so I'd like to put my comments on. I do recall that on December the 15th and in April the 27th, I made remarks along the line that we look to be delivering a desire for advances in how the council works in terms of public participation and webcasting, and we early learned that the previous chamber was not suitable. And just think back to how it used to be just a few months ago. This is a big change. This is a test fly of some early design elements. But I said at that time that whatever heritage designation we put in place has to have the flexibility such that we can meet some of those objectives for changes in how we do our business. I see this current proposal as meeting that standard, because I don't see anything here that denies us the opportunity to, one, make the changes that we see fit, and two, protect the heritage that is unique to this building and which we are proud of. One small little thing might be, I wonder when that notice board went up over there. I wonder if that was before we had the screens, and I've never seen that used, so maybe that could go. I don't know. I hope it's not heritage. Yeah, yeah, okay. I'd like to see a window in there and skylights, but that's not the building we have. Seeing it through the lens or seeing it through the designation means something different. And we are asking our public who have heritage buildings to go through a designation. And if they have a designation, to do their changes through that process. I don't see that Saanich itself should give it a free pass over the same standards it's asking for its residents. So both for the spirit and the intent of this well-written paper and recommendation, and also to respect staff recommendation that we embrace this. And it will be the staff that implement this, and they are aware of many of our wishes in terms of the changes that we're looking for. So I don't see that there will be delays or unnecessary burden from going through with the designation, and I will not be supporting this amendment. Any further speakers? I recognise Mr. Mayor.
The comments have been well heard. It's not a case of cart before the horse or chicken wing kind of thing, but you know, what the concerns that I have are about the modifications that will have to take place at the chamber. The chamber is at electrical capacity. The lighting has to be changed. There has to be wheelchair access. Is that door going to look exactly the way it is when everything's been done to the current building code? I mean, the building code for this place is decades old. Any modifications to the chamber are going to have to be made to the modern building code. I'm wondering just if we are encumbering ourselves by putting this in at this point. If the council chamber modifications and webcasting was on the order of $70,000 or $80,000, I think I would probably just say, it's okay, let's just put this through and then deal with it. But the bills that we've seen are very high. They're over $400,000. Those are substantial modifications. And I think that the council chamber may be impacted by that sheer dollar figure. That's all I really want to share.
Any further speakers? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favour of the motion? Amendment, I apologise, amendment to the motion. I see 3. Councillor Worgland, Mayor Atwell, Councillor Plant. I'm sorry? Okay, those against? Susan Bryce. Oh, I apologise. Hey, thank you. Councillor Bryce, Councillor Derman, Councillor Brownlow, Councillor Sanders, Councillor Murdoch, and myself, Councillor Haynes. Motion fails. The amendment is defeated. The amendment to the motion is defeated. Thank you. Now to the main motion. Yeah, I've got coaches around that for security. Thank you, guys. Send me in, coach. So now we'll come to the main motion, which is to repeal. I guess the first motion is that council repeal the heritage designation bylaw 6887.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, this is a motion to go to public hearing.
Very good. Okay. So now we come to the main motion, which is to go to public hearing. Thank you. Right, a second. It's been seconded. Right, we've returned to the motion. Sorry, I was so far out there. Okay. So here we are, the motion. Do we have someone who wants to speak to it? I see Councillor Working.
I just wanted to say to my colleagues, there's something about the word unanimous, and on something like this, I think the word would look good at the end of the night.
Okay. Anybody else to speak to this? Okay. I recognise the man.
Yeah, on the last comment, I think the more times we can move something to public hearing to hear from the public, the better. We certainly have a lot from our staff in the form of reports, and we have our own opinions, and we talk to the public and at some level, but to actually call the public hearing and to get everyone together in the same place and hear on it, and then make a decision is something I'm always in support of. I actually are quite disappointed when we don't go to public hearing, whether it be a small item or a large item. I think we need to do that as much as we can. Thank you.
Colin Plant, please, Councillor Plant.
That's okay. Question through you, Chair, to staff, perhaps CAO, perhaps planning. Councillor Sanders referred to informal practices of going through to other committees and getting their input, the lens of their input as it was described. Because all that was provided to council was the bylaw itself, I was unaware of these lenses through which it possibly would go through. So the question is, could the formal or informal process that were described as to what would happen be included in the documents that would go to public hearing, even though it's referring to the repealing of said bylaw?
Certainly provide a supplemental report that would provide that information for the clarity of everybody attending, yes.
Yeah, I would have liked to have seen it in this report, but how would I have known it didn't even exist? So thank you. Do you need a motion to amend to have that included, or can that just happen? Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so Clerk, could you read the current full motion, or are we still at the public hearing be called to consider the heritage designation bylaw? Okay, we're still at that. Any further input? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favour? Opposed? None opposed. I'd like to move to item 2. If Clerk would read that, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The second item on the agenda for the Committee of the Whole is 1095 Mackenzie Avenue. It's a development permit amendment. The report of the Director of Planning is recommending the Council approve the development permit amendment for proposed tenant improvements for the purpose of a new Tim Hortons franchise. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Clerk, Madam Clerk. So, Council, this is an opportunity for questions to staff. Councillor Working, please.
Thank you very much. It was indicated in your report that this wasn't a big item. What took it so long to come to council?
It actually didn't. It came in a very timely manner as far as I know the process. I could be corrected. It originally came forward as a tenant improvement and was processed as such. There was a request made of me as the director to approve this as a minor. And I felt that it was too substantial to do that and wanted to bring that forward to council, and we provided a report in a fairly short order. May not ever be fast enough, but we acknowledge that.
You did well, thank you.
Thank you. I saw Councillor Murdoch next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is also through you to our Director of Planning. So I often go past this mall and the signs up, changes are made. The only thing I could tell is that maybe the paint hasn't gone up. So what happens if we say no?
The Tim Hortons will continue to operate as is, where it is, and you would just be basically affecting the exterior look of the building.
So I guess what I'm wondering is there was no requirement to alter the development permit or to amend the development permit to put the signage up in the first place?
No, there was not.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Plant,
Defer, same question as Councilor.
any further questions? Seeing none, shall I call the question? I apologise, I jumped ahead again. I apologise. Read my notes. Thank you, Madam Clerk. So I'd like to ask the applicant to come forward, please, for your presentation.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Chair, members of the council, administration, the public. My name is Alex Taylor. I'm a planner with Dillon Consulting. We are currently Tim Hortons planner nationally. Have been working on over 200 stores in the past 2 years in about 100 municipalities in Western Canada, about 10 to 15 in the capital region here. So we're certainly very familiar with municipal requirements throughout the region. Got a few slides just to explain a little bit about our proposal that we're coming for support tonight. As you may have seen in the administration report, many of you are familiar with the location. This portion of our site plan here. The site history, when we were engaged to begin work on this store, it was a proposal for a tenant improvement only, and we submitted the building permit on March 7th. The building permit was approved on June 11th, and construction began on June 15th. During the construction, there were discussions with the franchisee and the contractor on site. As many of you may know, there's been some changes with Tim Hortons corporate ownership, and since January there have been a variety of changes within the context of who makes decisions on new stores and renovations. Anyway, throughout that transition, the franchisee had some questions on why there was no exterior changes proposed. That was something that he would like to see. So at that point, we began discussions and exploration on looking at making some exterior changes to the store. The development permit was submitted on August 25th. Shortly thereafter, we had some discussions with the Quadra Cedar Hill Community Association around their thoughts on the proposal. And then tonight, we're coming forward, seek approval for the proposed exterior changes to this location. And as mentioned, the store did open on September 30th under its tenant improvement permits and the sign permits that we had obtained as well. So the former exterior, as many of you have seen, looks like this. Currently today, with the tenant improvement and the sign permits, it looks as such. And the proposed exterior, four main changes proposed. The existing masonry wall to be clad with Rosetta stone. The existing masonry wall outside of the main door area to be clad with autumn red fiber cement lap siding. At the rear, existing rear stucco and exterior going to be painted brown. And around the sign soffit to be painted Savannah Wicker. And a couple clips of the north elevation and the east elevation there that are also in your report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. I see a question from Councillor Murdoch.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to the proponent. I noticed that in consultation, or perhaps it didn't come up in consultation, but through comments from the Community Association, there was a suggestion that more bicycle parking be provided. There was a question about providing outdoor seating. I can understand the constraints around the seating, given the parking lot, although perhaps there's a longer-term approach that could be taken there. But I'm curious about the bicycle parking. I saw one bike rack out front, and given that you're almost on top of the Lochside Trail in this location, I'm not convinced that that's going to be enough.
Thank you. Through the chair, in discussions with the landlord, the franchise has had a current bike rack out front during the tenant improvement. I actually clarified with the franchisee today that it was somewhat rusty, and so they have replaced that with a larger bike rack out front. The landlord has mentioned that there's a second bike rack on site as well, and so with enlarging that bike rack out front, we feel we have made some progress in that area as well.
Thank you, and I guess just as my observation, that you've got an awful lot of asphalt up front for car parking that I think could be put to good use for, say, an outdoor seating location. I'm confident that's probably something that they've considered, that the franchisee has already considered, but I would strongly encourage any aspect that would make this more of a people-oriented place rather than reserved almost exclusively for cars to park.
Sure, appreciate that. In most of our locations, the patios are considered in areas that aren't currently used for parking, as most municipalities do not like to see reductions in parking. I think that's certainly something that we could consider in the future if that was something that the municipality would like to encourage.
Any further questions to the applicant? Okay, you can take a break for now, and we might call you back if there are questions.